Alright. Nothing to really... Oh, hello! Hey! Sorry I didn't hear you come in. Hey. Hi. How can I help you? Yeah, I repair stuff. Well, mostly metal stuff, you know. It kind of just depends what people need. Either I can repair or I can recommend someone who does, but I won't know until you tell me of the item in question. Yeah, tinker. It's an old word for, well, I suppose repairman. Really, I think the literal definition comes from someone who used to repair kind of household items made out of tin. But seeing as I don't have much in my house apart from tin foil, it's mostly just repairing odd bits and ends now. Yeah, I can do an antique. Why not? Don't get too obsessed over the name, okay? Yes, it's Tinker, but it's not. It's not Tinker from WoW. It's not Tinker from Dota. It's not Tinker Bell. Although I could fix a bell. It's just a name for the repair shop which you are currently standing in, which I run. I do smile this charmingly at all my customers. Actually, it's very good for business, I find. It's also just good for charming. So, no, it's... Well, how about we find out if I can fix what you want fixed first, and then we can try and figure out how charming I may or may not be outside of the workplace. How about that? Well, if nothing else, if I'm useless at my job, I'd make a pretty useless repairman around the house. I wouldn't be very good at parties, you know. I can't bring out broken looking things and then make them whole again to the delight of the children. I also wouldn't be bringing much money into the relationship. There's so many long-term considerations you really must have. Why, yes, I am assuming you think of me as a long-term prospect. Well, because... why wouldn't you? I mean, look at me. I have my own business. I am erudite, charming, devilishly handsome. Just waiting for the agreement on devilishly handsome. I'm waiting for the agreement so long I can't even say the words anymore. Wait, a crack in the very thin veneer of confidence. No, put it back. You say I'm devilishly handsome. You do. Oh, a man's ego is an incredibly fragile thing. Never have that mistaken. If you ever want proof of that, just watch them when their favourite sports team loses. All semblance of logic and rationality will go out the window, I promise you. Anyways, what can I do you for here? Oh, a little pocket watch, huh? This looks... oh, we get a little... Wow. Huh. Do you, not sound like the Antiques Roadshow? Do you know the story behind this? Family heirloom, I would have... well... Well, this is from a maker from very far afield. Must be an interesting story of how your family came into possession of it. Because it wasn't at a local flea market, I can tell you that much. Did anyone in your family rub shoulders with foreign diplomats or aristocracy, perhaps? Say, 160 odd years ago, I would say. Well, yeah, I mean, that's roughly when this case at least looks like it was made. How many of the parts inside are original, it's very hard to know without actually opening it up. And I wouldn't do that, of course, without you agreeing to, commission my rather fine services to fix the piece. And what's more, with the price for you being dinner and, perhaps a glass of wine, and the story behind this, well, it's a very hefty price to pay. I'm afraid I am slightly kidding. I will still have to charge you. But, we can say that if the dating thing works out, then I promise you'll be paid back in your original investment. And you'll get the watch back. So, And plus this thing might actually just be valuable in of itself. Which means I'd be looking at trying to repair it with as much of the original parts as possible. So it doesn't spin at all. As in the gears in here. There's no click, there's no anything, right? So we are looking at completely dead. The thing about this, as I say, the more original I can keep it, the better. I mean, putting a whole, gleaming modern clockwork system in here kind of spoils it a little to me. But at the same time, I suppose it's a value decision for you. Would you rather it working and more modern inside, or working but maybe not as reliably with more original pieces? That's a personal choice. I can't make that for you. Well, it's rather based on what you want to do with it. I mean, if you want to, if you want to check the time and say, wow, I've been on this date for so long and the conversation's just been flowing magically, then you're probably going to want to put the modern parts in it. But if the idea is to sell it so that you can afford to, go on a really, really fancy date with, all the fancy about town people and pay like 4 or 5 times as much for a piece of steak that's about 4 times smaller than it would be somewhere else, and not really seasoned very well and just altogether overly pretentious, then maybe it is better to put older parts on it and sell it on. Then again, I'm not an antiques dealer by trade anyway. I'm not going to pretend it's my forte, so it's possible this piece might actually be worth more with modern parts that are working more reliably. I don't really know in this instance. What I do know is that a watch like this is going to be, well, has bigger parts than a standard watch, obviously, in terms of the mechanism inside here, that is. And presuming you haven't, your family haven't had it serviced by either a professional who is trying to cut shortcuts in order to make as much money as possible and also to get the service done as quickly as possible, or, well, again, hopefully no one in your family was an amateur repair. Well, I'm not even sure what the word would be. Repair effortist? Repair trier? Repairer? Anyway, the point is that this... So I'm not erudite or... I'm not using the depths and wonders of my almost ceaseless vocabulary in this particular instance, as I am trying not to come across as a pompous doofus too much, putting a little bit of pompous in there, but not overdoing it. Right, the watch. So basically, yeah, my only worry with a watch that's old, without really knowing what's been done to it, is we could be looking at Franken watch. If different people have repaired it at different times with different levels of, well, care, I suppose. On the plus side, if for some reason I do judge this to be something you want done by someone, well, let's just put it the way of more expensive but more meticulous than me. And this is not to say I will be shoddy, it's just simply that there's a chance if this is very valuable, and I'll send a little picture along to one of my friends who does deal in this stuff. If it's very valuable, we might want it done by essentially somewhat official repair experts for the maker, you know, knows all the little secrets and all that kind of stuff and can get it to a very high standard. Now that will cost a decent chunk. I'd compare it to getting a Ferrari repaired at a Ferrari garage. You know, they don't do anything else, so they're going to take their time with it and be good, hopefully. But they'll certainly charge you. So, again, I'm confident I can get this working perfectly fine as long as it's not too botched on the inside, but I'm not confident that it would be up to the highest possible spec, because I do other things, not just this. You might be better off with a pure specialist. The dinner, however, you don't want a pure specialist. You want a generalist like myself, because I can have many, you know, broad topics of conversation, and from interesting political discourse to truly riveting philosophical debates, I have it all. A guy who's very good at repairing one very specific type of watch is probably going to talk about repairing that very specific type of watch. So I would go with me being the outstanding candidate in almost all cases, and especially this one. And with only a slight touch of the Basil faulty at the moment, and the pretenses to class. If you haven't watched Faulty Towers, dear God, what are you doing with your life? Well, I certainly hope you've watched it anyway. It's a classic for a reason, you know. Well, I'd compare it to your watch. Sure, it's not a digital watch, it hasn't aged well in the sense that you can clearly tell what time period it was written in, but at the same time, antique things hold value. Just like you should keep your watch, I'll most certainly be keeping my DVDs, that's for sure. Anyway, this is all conversations that would suit a glass of particularly fine wine. Hey, it could have been even more corny. I could have said glass as fine as your pick whichever feature you would most like to be complimented. Oh, it's a yes. Yes on what? The date or the watch repair? Or both? Well, I think both is a truly marvellous choice. Exquisite. Displaying the very finest in judgment. That's not quite... I don't like that sentence particularly. I could reevaluate it at a later date. This is one of the odder chattings up I've ever done, but do you know what? I'm going to keep going with it. It appears to be working. So, yeah, somehow. Well, yeah, the watch itself, I will take a look at it this afternoon. Well, I'll wait for my dealers to get back to me first. If I think it is beyond... let's just say if it is as valuable as I think it might be, you might really want to get a specialist in order to maximize value. But then the other thing you might notice about that sentence is that it's kind of on the presumption that you'd want to sell it, whereas as a family heirloom, maybe you want to keep it, maybe you want to carry it around, or at the very least have it ticking on a mantelpiece somewhere. Okay, well, I'll get it valued anyway. If nothing else, it's worth knowing what it's worth. And I will call you and let you know from there. And when I do so, I shall also give you a list of 3 restaurants to pick from. Why not? You'd rather I just pick? Okay, works for me. I'm not telling you yet, because if nothing else, I haven't decided yet. All depends how valuable your watch is. Why? Because if I'm going to do a runner and foist the bill onto you, I'll need to know how much you can afford. Ugh, amateurs, I swear. I am kidding, of course, but it's more what will take my fancy at the time. Anyway, as much as I do enjoy talking to you about things that won't be watches, presumably, in the near future, I actually do have to get back to work, as much as that sucks. I'd far rather not, but, well, as someone who works for themselves, I must keep a certain discipline. If I don't, it'll be very easy to get very far behind schedule, and then I'd end up disappointing everybody, and that would make me feel very bad about myself, and I would stop doing things I enjoy, such as streaming and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I must keep on top of my schedule, which means I must work hard, which means I must have all my fancy-dancy equipment around me, which means you must leave now so I can get back to all of the arduous work I do to be able to bring you a wonderful date this evening. Okay. Alright, well, I will call you later. And I look forward to arranging our date then.